I'm 79 years old now, and I wake up most mornings to a house so quiet it feels like the walls are holding their breath. I've been living alone for near about 19 years. After 60, folks don't tell you the truth about what that means. They talk about retirement. They talk about freedom. They don't talk about the silence. They don't talk about how the quiet can sit on your chest heavier than any Jim Crow law ever did. I was born in 1946, down in rural Mississippi. Back when colored wasn't just a word, it was a boundary. It was a warning. It was a fence around your whole life. We had 2 water fountains in town, 2 waiting rooms, 2 everything. And you learned early which one was yours. My daddy picked cotton. My mama cleaned white folks' houses. We didn't call it poverty. We called it making do. That's what everybody said. You make do, you don't complain, and you keep your head down. Church was the only place we could breathe all the way in. Sunday mornings, the choir would lift up them old gospel hymns, and for a few hours you felt human. Not black, not less than, just human. But Monday always came. I was 12 the first time I saw a man get shoved off a sidewalk for not stepping aside fast enough. Didn't matter he was older than the boy who pushed him. That's how it was. Respect ran one direction. You learn survival before you learn joy. When I was 18, I left Mississippi, took that Greyhound bus north during what they called the tail end of the Great Migration. Everybody said Chicago was different. Set up there you could get factory work. Set up there you could vote without counting jelly beans in a jar. Chicago was different, but it wasn't free. Up there they didn't have signs telling you where you couldn't go. They had lines on maps, red lines. You couldn't rent certain apartments, couldn't get certain loans, couldn't move your family past certain streets. Segregation just put on a suit and tie. I worked at a steel plant on the south side. Hot, loud, dangerous work. 12-hour shifts sometimes. Hands cracked and bleeding in winter. Sweat burning your eyes in summer. I was strong back then. Strong in my back. Strong in my pride. I got married at 23. Her name was Lorraine. She had a laugh that made you forget the world was cruel. We had 2 boys by the time I was 30. And that's when survival really set in. See, being a black man in those days meant you carried more than your own weight. You carried the fear that your sons wouldn't make it home. You carried the humiliation from work so it wouldn't spill onto your wife. You carried the anger of being passed over for promotions you knew you earned. And you didn't talk about it. There wasn't no therapy. There wasn't no check on your mental health. You handled it. Or you drowned in it quietly. I code switched before I even knew that word existed. At work, I softened my voice, smiled when supervisors made jokes that wasn't funny, nodded when they called me boy long past boyhood. At home, I was strict, not mean, just tight, like a fist that never opened. I thought I was protecting my family, thought if I was hard enough, the world wouldn't break them. But hardness has a cost. I missed ball games because overtime paid better than apologies. Missed school plays because rent didn't care about talent. Lorraine would sit in the kitchen after the boys went to bed, quiet as a church mouse, and I'd know she wanted more from me than tired silence. I didn't know how to give it. When the Civil Rights Act passed, I was 18. When Dr. King was killed, I was 22. I remember standing in the living room watching that television, feeling something inside me tear. We marched some, we protested some, but mostly we worked. Progress came, but it came slow, and it didn't erase what we'd already swallowed. By the time I hit 45, my body was wearing down, knees aching, back stiff every morning. The plant laid off half the crew in the early 80s. Steel was dying. So was that version of America. I took whatever jobs I could, warehouse, night security, driving trucks. Lorraine stuck by me. But somewhere along the way, the laughter faded. It wasn't one big fight. It wasn't betrayal. It was erosion. Years of me coming home too tired to listen. Years of her holding things in because she knew I was already carrying too much. Years of both of us thinking endurance was the same thing as love. The boys grew up. They moved out. One went to Atlanta. The other stayed in Illinois, but not close. They got their own families, their own lives. That's how it's supposed to be. But nobody tells you how fast the house empties. Lorraine got sick when we were 60. Ovarian cancer. Quiet. Ruthless. By the time we caught it, it was already deep in her body. I retired early to take care of her. For the first time in our marriage, I was home, really home, sitting beside her, cooking, cleaning, holding her hand. And I kept thinking, why did it take illness for me to slow down? She passed 2 weeks after her 62nd birthday. The day after the funeral, everybody went back to their lives. And I stayed in that house. That's when living alone started. After 60, people think you settled. They think you peaceful. What they don't see is how grief echoes. You'll be washing dishes and suddenly remember the way she hummed while folding laundry. You'll reach across the bed in your sleep and wake up touching nothing. The boys called. They visited when they could, but they had careers, kids, responsibilities. I told them I was fine. That's what my generation does. We say we fine. The truth is, loneliness don't crash in all at once. It creeps. First, you stop cooking big meals. Then you stop setting the table proper. Then you realize you ain't heard your own laughter in months. Church friends start passing away, one by one. Funerals become more common than birthdays. You outlive the people who knew you when you were young. That's a different kind of loss. Because when they're gone, parts of your story go with them. By 70, I was invisible. Young folks at the grocery store look through you like you a piece of furniture. Doctors talk over you instead of to you. The world moves faster than your knees, and the house stays quiet. Sometimes I sit in that living room and think about the man I was at 30. So determined, so focused on survival. I thought if I just worked hard enough, stayed strong enough, my family would be safe. But strength without softness leaves cracks. My oldest boy told me once, gentle as he could, "Daddy, you was there, but you wasn't always with us." That hurt. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right. Survival cost me presence. Living alone after 60 forces you to sit with that. There ain't no distractions left. No job to bury yourself in. No noise to drown out regret. Just you and your memories. I don't regret providing. I'm proud of that. We kept food on the table. Kept them boys out of jail. Got them through school. But I regret the laughter I postponed, the tenderness I rationed, the apologies I swallowed. We were taught that being strong meant being silent. Nobody told us silence turns inward. I look at my grandkids now. They got freedoms I couldn't imagine at their age. They speak up. They question. They talk about feelings without shame. Part of me smiles at that. Part of me wonders who I might have been if I'd had that room. But time don't bend backward. You can't reclaim your 30s at 79. You can't go back and sit in that school auditorium for a play that already ended. You can't unsay the sharp words spoken out of exhaustion. Living alone after 60, it's brutal because it removes the audience. There's nobody left to perform strength for. Just you. Just the truth. Some nights, I walk through this house touching the walls like they memory books. Here's where Lorraine used to stand arguing about paint colors. Here's where the boys measured their height with pencil marks. The pencil mark's still there. People think old age is peaceful. Sometimes it is, but it's also a reckoning. You reckon with the fact that you were both victim and participant. Victim of a system that squeezed black life tight. Participant in passing down some of that tightness. I did the best I knew how. But the best we knew wasn't always gentle. If you're younger and listening to me, I ain't here to preach. I ain't got the energy for that. I just want you to understand something. Don't wait for illness to slow you down. Don't confuse silence with strength. The world will demand your toughness. It will test you, especially if you black, especially if you came from where I came from. But the people who love you, they need your softness too. They need your laughter now, not when you retire, not when the house empty. I spent decades thinking survival was the whole assignment. Turns out, living is something different. At 79, I don't have many grand plans left. My body moves careful, my steps smaller. I visit Lorraine's grave every Sunday after church, sit there and talk to her like she just stepped inside for a minute. I know my time coming. That ain't fear talking. That's just math. And I'm not angry. I'm tired sometimes, lonely sometimes, but I'm also proud. Proud we made it through what we made it through. Proud my grandkids won't ever see a colored-only sign. That matters. Still, when the sun sets and the house go quiet again, I feel the weight of everything that was traded for survival. Living alone after 60 is brutal because it strips you down to memory and breath. And memory don't lie. If this story means something to you, hold your people a little longer tonight. Say the thing you've been holding back. Sit at the table, even if you're tired. Time moves quicker than you think. One day you look up and you're 79, talking to empty rooms. I don't know how many more mornings I got in this house, but I know this. I was here. I loved the best I could. I survived an America that wasn't built for me. And even in this quiet, that has to be enough.